それで、先ほどの話とつながってしますが、それで17世紀の前半までに、武道というものの考え方ができてきたというところです。ところが、それが17世紀の後半、平和な時代になって非常に神殿開発もされ、高度経済成長という時代です。で、都市がもうその時代はあれですね、大名の家臣たちというのは必ず1年ごとに江戸に行かないといけないということになります。参勤交代という形になりますが、そういうそのところで江戸のその大きな都市に行ったら、そこの要するに非常に繁栄したその風情に染まりますね。
Where I'm sitting is the main point of interrogation. People would pass along this area, which was probably more sand than rocks at that time, and then they would have to kneel here individually or perhaps in pairs and face the magistrate who sat here in a very intimidating way, I'm sure, while he checked everything. His samurai, his lower samurai, would occupy this next room in this area, and they were equipped with a number of things that if people actually tried to run and to escape, which is almost unthinkable when you think of the narrowness of this valley, they had several different kinds of poles with hooks on them. They could just hook these people by the clothes. They didn't have to actually grapple or cut them down or anything like that. Now, the samurai that basically went through here were connected with the daimyo, but everybody came through here, whether they were people on pilgrimages, whether they were poets, whether they were just people who were out to travel and go from one part of Japan to the other. And another class of people who perhaps came through here were ronin, or masterless samurai, as they walked the country, sharpening their skills. They too would have had a pass to go through. They wouldn't have been able to pass through otherwise. But it's interesting to think of the ronin that would come through, because as I say, they were sharpening their skills. They were out to meet other samurai who were doing the same. These were called shugyosha, and it means a sort of a person in training. It's the same word that you use for priests who are out training in Buddhism. The Shugyosha samurai, or the Shugyosha swordsman, would carry very little with them. Maybe a sewing kit, maybe just a very few coins, their swords of course, but not much else. And they would stop and they would work at various places to try to make their way. This was part of their training. One of the most famous Shugyosha, of course, was Miyamoto Musashi. Now, Musashi traveled throughout the country, whether he passed through the Kiso area, this Nakasendo, or not, we don't know, because he didn't leave too awfully many records of where he was. But Musashi would have passed through any number of places like this in his many travels. Musashi is perhaps most famous for the book that he wrote called the Gorin no Sho, or the Book of Five Rings, which some people take as simply a document to note these various types of swordsmanship, but others read a deeper meaning into almost everything that he writes, that it really was a way of living. And his last chapter in the book, really, which is the shortest and probably the most vague, indicates that this was a way of life rather than simply technique. And in fact, Musashi was sort of famous for saying that technique comes second, that attitude and your kokoro, or your mind, heart, really comes first.